Hey guys, welcome back to Medieval Historian. Or if you're new here, welcome in. Get ready, because tonight we're diving headfirst into one of the most brutal, chaotic, and downright horrifying moments in human history. This video is all about what it was really like to live through the Black Death. Not just the facts and figures, but the smell, the fear, the scratching, the screams, and the silence that followed. Today, we panic when a cough echoes on a crowded train. But back then, a simple cough could mean you were already halfway to your grave. Now we have vaccines, antibiotics, and ventilators. In 1347, you had leeches, prayers, and a hole in the ground. Modern quarantine means working from home in sweatpants. Medieval quarantine meant getting nailed into your house and hoping you died quick. Different worlds, same fear. So, before we begin and before you get too comfortable, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next descent into the past. And tell me in the comments, what city and country are you watching from? And what time is it right now where you are? I'm just a nerd who loves digging into history's darkest corners, and it always blows my mind to see people tuning in from all over the world. You guys make this journey even more amazing. I'm seriously so happy and kind of awestruck to know that this weird little time machine of a channel has people watching from every corner of the globe. This is what it was really like living through the Black Death. You wake up to the sound of distant bells tolling. Not for mass, not for a festival, but for another funeral. It's 1347, and something is stirring in the ports of Europe. The kind of something that doesn't knock before entering. There are whispers from Genoa, Pisa, and Marseille. Ships arriving from the east, not with silk or spices, but with corpses. Slumped on deck, lips black, eyes vacant, skin riddled with swollen lumps the size of apples. These ships don't need permission to dock. The disease jumps from body to body, rat to rat, flea to skin. It doesn't care about borders, it's already inside. There's no fanfare, no warning. The world simply begins to die. People go to bed with a cough and never wake up. Others feel fine in the morning, and by nightfall they're buried beneath 6 feet of dirt, assuming there's still space. The first wave comes quietly. It doesn't announce itself with screams or trumpets, just a strange silence in the market, a closed door that used to be open, a neighbor who isn't at their stall. Then the bodies pile up, literally, in alleys, in courtyards, stacked behind churches like firewood no one wants to touch. And yet, somehow, it's only the beginning. This isn't just a plague, it's a dismantling. Institutions collapse like dominoes. The law? Gone. Your priest? Dead. The baker? Disappeared 3 days ago. Entire villages vanish. No letters, no survivors. Just wind whistling through empty huts and bones picked clean by stray dogs. And you can feel it too, that creeping sense that the world is breaking in real time, and no one knows how to stop it. Every cough is suspect. Every shadow on someone's skin is a countdown. People start carrying flowers, not for beauty, but to block the stench of decay that now hangs in the air like a curse, and no one knows what's causing it. Some say it's a punishment from God for sin. Others blame the alignment of the planets, or that weird red mist in the sky last month. A few point fingers at foreign merchants or poor hygiene or witches. Everyone is guessing, but no one is right. The truth is smaller than the eye can see and faster than the fastest horse. It hides in the blood, in the lungs, under the skin. And it's already here. Welcome to Europe in the late 1340s. The roads are quiet, the air is thick with smoke, and hope is shrinking with every passing hour. You've just stepped into the worst biological disaster in human history, and you're not going to survive it. It doesn't start with fire or fury. It starts with a bite. One tiny bite from one infected flea. Not the kind of thing you'd notice. Not at first. Maybe it itches, maybe it doesn't. But the real damage begins beneath the skin, where the bacteria multiplies like a curse on fast forward. The flea doesn't even know it's a killer. It just feeds, jumps, and moves on. And now, so does the plague. The bacteria travels through blood like it's late for something. Within a few days you feel it, the sudden fever that rises like a wave of heat inside your bones, the chills that make you shiver even while sweat drips from your temples. Your lymph nodes swell into buboes, tender blackened lumps that form in your groin, your neck, your armpits. They throb like buried coals. Each one is a screaming alarm that your body is shutting down. Your head aches, your stomach turns, your muscles tremble. Your skin begins to blacken around the extremities, a sign that your blood isn't moving the way it should anymore. You try to stand, but your legs betray you. You try to speak, but the words slur. And then comes the coughing, wet, gasping, full of blood. People around you keep their distance. They won't say it out loud, but they've already buried you in their minds. You're contagious, you're doomed. And there's no treatment, none. No antibiotics, no understanding of bacteria, no knowledge of how the plague spreads. People still think it's the air, the bad air, the miasma. They burn herbs in your room. They wave sweet-smelling flowers near your face. They slice your veins and bleed you with knives that haven't been cleaned since last week's patient. They might even try to boil your urine or press onions to your skin. It won't help. The bite is just the spark. What follows is a wildfire. You infect others long before you collapse. The breath you exhale, the sweat on your clothes, the rat that bites you then scurries away. It all becomes a vector. Entire homes fall sick within days. Families vanish in clusters. Whole neighborhoods begin to rot from within. And it's not just the poor. Nobles, clergy, merchants, no one is safe. The disease does not discriminate. It spreads with ruthless equality, from castle to slum, from pulpit to alley. People turn on each other fast. Trust dissolves, paranoia blooms. You start avoiding eye contact. You sleep with a scarf tied over your mouth. You hold your breath when someone coughs, and yet it keeps coming, faster, meaner, deadlier. The bite was just the beginning. You are now part of the chain. You are the walking sick. You are a story someone will whisper before they burn your clothes and dig your grave. And it all began with a flea. One tiny, forgettable flea. It always starts small. A scratch behind the ear, an ache in your back, a warm flush in your cheeks that feels more like a change in weather than a warning sign. You tell yourself it's nothing. A draft, maybe. A bit too much labor under the midday sun. But somewhere inside, your body already knows. The infection is whispering through your veins, multiplying like a secret. You go to sleep tired, slightly feverish. You wake up soaked in sweat, with your joints locked tight and your stomach turning in knots. Your head throbs as if your skull is being hammered from the inside. And then you notice it. That lump beneath your arm, the size of a hazelnut but growing. By midday, it's the size of a plum. Hot to the touch, tender, and terrifying. This is the fever that won't break, the heat that clings, the itch that turns to burn. Your clothes feel unbearable against your skin. You lie on your straw mattress, clawing at your chest, trying to find air that doesn't exist. No matter how many times you rinse your face with water from the basin, the heat stays. And then come the black spots. Strange, dark blotches across your torso and legs. Your fingers swell. Your toes lose feeling. The burning behind your eyes makes it hard to blink. You're not just sick. You're changing. The disease is sculpting you into its next exhibit. No one says the word plague out loud, it's bad luck. But people know. They see it in your face, in the stink of your sweat, in the way your voice cracks when you try to speak. Neighbors avoid your door. Your family sleeps with cloth over their mouths. And the worst part? You're still aware, you're lucid enough to feel it, to watch it happen. You feel yourself being cut off, not just from your community, but from your own body. It's no longer a vessel, it's a battlefield, and you're losing. The fever doesn't come in waves, it's a flood. It breaks your will and boils your blood until you stop asking if you'll get better and start wondering how much worse it will get. Some people sweat until they faint. Others hallucinate, seeing saints or demons at the foot of their beds. A few scream for hours, most simply fall silent. You wonder which one you'll be. Then, between the trembling and the bleeding gums, you realize your lump has doubled in size. It's purple now, oozing. Your body is liquefying from the inside out, and you haven't even hit the worst part. In the 14th century, medical science is less about answers and more about educated guessing mixed with medieval superstition. There are no labs, no germ theory, no petri dishes, just philosophy, astrology, and blood. And when the plague hits, those guesses become dangerous. The finest minds of Europe can't agree if the Black Death is divine punishment, poisoned air, or something in your bodily fluids called humors. Doctors suggest everything from taking long baths in rosewater to burning aromatic herbs, to lancing your buboes with hot irons. The common thread? None of it works. And yet people still try. They try because fear is louder than reason, and desperation always finds someone to listen to. Physicians wear long robes and leather beak masks stuffed with lavender and mint, believing the scent will filter out the poison in the air. Others burn piles of juniper and rosemary inside their homes, filling their lungs with smoke and their minds with hope. Some towns launch campaigns to remove bad smells from their streets, raking human waste into trenches and covering it with lime. But no matter how many flowers they stuff in their sleeves, the bodies keep falling. Then come the flagellants, processions of half-naked men marching from town to town, whipping themselves bloody in the belief that suffering will purify their sins and end the plague. People cheer them on, join them, feed them. It becomes a movement, a spectacle, but the disease doesn't care. It follows them like a shadow, feeding on the very crowds that gather to watch. Meanwhile, in private homes, apothecaries hand out crushed emeralds, ground unicorn horn, and potions made from fermented toad. People line up to swallow poisons that promise salvation. Priests preach repentance, urging everyone to confess their sins, beg for mercy, and flagellate their souls. If the plague is punishment, they argue, then the cure must be obedience. But the priests die too. Churches collapse under the weight of funerals. Bells toll without pause. Entire congregations disappear within weeks, and the belief that this is all divine justice starts to crack. If even the holy are perishing, then what hope do the rest have? No one understands what's happening. No one can explain how it spreads, and yet the advice keeps coming. Burn your linens, drink vinegar, avoid wet food, sleep with a chopped onion on your pillow. Don't bathe too often. Bathe every day, say your prayers. Stop speaking to foreigners, it's a firestorm of contradiction. But when the world is unraveling, people will cling to anything that feels like control, even if it's wrong. Especially if it's wrong, because the scariest thing about the Black Death isn't just that it kills, it's that it kills while no one has a clue why. When your body begins to betray you, boils bursting, breath wheezing, joints locking, you look for help. And then he appears, tall, slow-moving, cloaked in black robes that billow like smoke. His face is hidden beneath a strange, curved mask, with 2 glass eye holes and a beak stuffed with herbs. This isn't a costume. This is your doctor, or what passes for one in the 14th century. A figure that looks less like a healer and more like Death's apprentice. And truthfully, he is. The beaked mask is no accident. It's designed to protect the physician from bad air, the so-called miasma believed to carry the plague. Inside the beak are flowers, spices, and dried herbs, lavender, mint, sometimes crushed camphor. Anything that might purify the air before it enters the lungs. The robes are waxed against moisture. The gloves are thick. The stick he carries isn't for walking. It's for prodding you from a distance. You are dangerous now, and even the doctor won't come close. But here's the twist. The plague doctor isn't really a doctor. Not by today's standards. He's more of a bureaucratic figure. Someone hired by cities to count the dead, record symptoms, and occasionally lance a bubo or 2. He knows how to draw blood. He knows how to write a death certificate. He does not know how to save you. No one does. His presence is more symbolic than medicinal. When you see the bird mask, it means 2 things. 1, the city has officially acknowledged the outbreak. And 2, you're already too late. The irony is cruel. These bird-faced figures are meant to protect, but they often spread fear just by existing. Children cry when they see them. Adults turn away. When one enters a home, it means someone inside is going to die, or already has. The mask becomes a prophecy, the robe a mourning shroud worn in advance. And because these doctors are overwhelmed, often untrained, and constantly exposed, many don't last long. Some contract the very disease they're trying to avoid. Others abandon their posts and flee. But still, some stay. They make rounds. They write notes. They bleed patients with dull knives. They stuff your sores with crushed garlic and vinegar-soaked rags. They mutter Latin phrases and record your final hours. And in a way, that's all anyone can offer, a final witness. Someone to see you, mask and all, before the darkness swallows everything else. Because in the era of the Black Death, care doesn't mean comfort. It means containment. And the man behind the beak? He's probably just as scared as you are. You've probably heard the rhyme, ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. It sounds like something sweet, something you'd sing on a playground while skipping in a circle, but it's not. It's a ghost. One of the few survivors of a time when children didn't play outside for long. When flowers weren't for fun, but for fending off death, and when rings weren't jewelry, they were the first sign that your skin was about to rot. The ring around the rosy was a red rash, often the first physical marker of infection. It bloomed like a halo before the buboes followed, as if your body was trying to draw a target around itself. The posies weren't decoration, they were defense. People carried herbs and flowers in their pockets and masks, believing they could cleanse the filthy air. Whole families tucked lavender, rosemary, and sage into their sleeves and bedding, praying it would keep the sickness away. It didn't. Ashes, ashes, or in some versions, achoo, achoo, wasn't about sneezing. It was about the burning of bodies, the burning of homes, the ash that floated on the wind long after the flames died. Cities ran out of coffins. They dug trenches. They piled bodies like firewood and set them alight. It was the only way to keep up. The rhyme ends, we all fall down, and they did. Sometimes whole households fell within days, sometimes whole streets. The rhyme stuck around because it rhymed, because it was catchy, because no one knew how else to talk about the horror, so they taught it to their children in a circle, with a smile, long after the meaning faded. But in the 14th century there was no melody. Just the thud of bodies hitting the ground, the scent of wilted posies, and the smoke that never seemed to clear. The line between life and death blurred, and people invented rituals just to cope. They drew chalk rings on doors, circled their homes with salt, lit incense at each corner of their beds. The plague became a part of daily life, and every gesture was a mix of habit, hope, and helplessness. The flowers didn't work, the rings didn't protect, but they gave people something to do while they waited. Waited for a miracle, waited for a cure, waited to fall down. And hundreds of years later, that fall still echoes. In a song, in a circle, in the air that once carried death like a whisper. By the time you notice, it's already too late. The baker hasn't opened his shop in 3 days. The tavern doors are bolted. Church bells don't ring anymore. Not because there are no dead, but because there's no one left to ring them. What used to be a bustling, noisy town is now a silent carcass. Streets, once filled with carts and chatter, are empty, save for the occasional dog dragging a severed hand from under a porch. Your town is rotting. Not just in metaphor, but in smell, sight, and sound. The decay is everywhere. You can smell it before you see it. A pungent blend of sour meat, wet soil, and something worse. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your throat. You breathe through cloth, but it doesn't help. The scent gets inside you. It becomes you. Doors are left swinging open, chickens wander freely, and silence hangs in the air like a prayer left unanswered. Windows are shuttered not for warmth, but for fear. Fear that someone inside is coughing, dying, or already gone. And when you do see people, they don't look you in the eye. Everyone walks faster now. Everyone is afraid to stop moving. Corpses are no longer buried with ceremony. They're dragged by the ankles to makeshift pits dug just outside the town walls. The gravediggers gave up last week. Now it's orphans, widows, and half-sick strangers who shoulder the task. Some wear hoods, some cover their mouths, but none escape the stench, and when the pits fill, the dead are burned. Bodies stacked like logs, soaked in pitch and set alight. The flames are not holy, they're practical. The fire eats the flesh faster than the worms can. And then come the animals. Rats, bold and fat, scurry across thresholds and climb over beds where no one stirs. Cats disappear. Dogs roam in packs, wild-eyed and starving. Birds circle overhead, waiting. Nature doesn't mourn. It just takes advantage. The walls crumble, the thatch sags, mold creeps into homes like a second skin, and all the while, your senses dull. What shocked you a week ago barely registers today. You step over a bloated corpse without flinching. You eat in the same room where someone died. Your soul shrinks to make room for survival. Because in a rotting town, there's no space left for grief, only endurance. They are everywhere, in the rafters, under the straw, behind the barrels. At night, you hear them scuttling, chewing, squeaking. Tiny monsters with shining eyes and disease hidden in their blood. Rats are no longer just a nuisance. They are death's delivery boys, creeping into your home like uninvited guests with blood on their paws. You can't kill them fast enough. You can't trap them all. You can't even escape them. Because for every one you chase away, 10 more take its place. They travel with the plague. Their fleas jump hosts like dancers, switching partners at a macabre ball. And those fleas don't care if they land on your dog, your sister, or your sleeping face. You don't see the moment you're infected. You just wake up wrong. A scratchy throat, a swollen gland, a crawling sense that something is under your skin, because something was. Cities try to purge them. Fires are lit. Fumigation pits dug. But it's no use. The rats are smarter than people give them credit for. They flee when the smoke rises. They tunnel beneath walls. They chew through sealed doors. They spread faster than fear. And worst of all, no one believes it's them. People still blame bad air, divine punishment, and foreign poison. But it's the rats who have front row seats to the apocalypse. They watch from rafters while your loved ones scream. They nibble the edges of cloth wrapped around corpses. They multiply in the shadows while you bury another child. You may not see them during the day, but they're there. You feel their presence. You hear their scratching. And you know they're waiting. Waiting for you to sleep. Waiting for you to weaken. Waiting to move on to the next warm body. Because to the rats, this isn't a tragedy. It's opportunity. The streets are empty. The food is plentiful. The humans are distracted. And the plague is doing all the hard work for them. So you light more candles. You hang dried herbs in the corners. You whisper prayers at midnight. But the rats don't care. They don't fear light or smell or superstition. Because they were here before the sickness. And they'll be here long after you're gone. There is no moment of doubt, no subtle shift. When the buboes arrive, they arrive like an executioner's hammer. Hard, fast, unforgiving. It starts as a tenderness beneath the skin, a hot, aching pressure in your groin, armpit, or neck. You touch it, thinking it might be a swollen gland, maybe a sprain. But by nightfall, it's unmistakable. A bulging, angry lump, swollen to the size of a hen's egg. It throbs with each heartbeat. By morning, it's doubled in size. Purple, black, sometimes leaking, sometimes pulsing like something alive beneath the surface. These aren't just swellings, they're symbols. A cruel stamp from the plague itself. Everyone recognizes them. No one admits it. The second you show one, people step back. They stop making eye contact. You are no longer you. You are a warning. The bubo is your name now, and it's loud. You wrap cloth around it, try to hide it. But the pain gives you away. Every step, every motion is agony. Your limbs are no longer yours. They belong to the infection now. There's no real treatment. Some people have them lanced with red-hot knives, hoping the pus draining out will take the sickness with it. Others apply poultices made of onions, lard, and crushed frogs. Some drink mercury, others pray. But no matter what you try, the bubo grows. The pain becomes a part of you. Your side stiffens. You can't sleep. You can barely breathe. And yet, somehow, it's not even the worst part. Because the bubo is just the herald. After it comes the fever, the vomiting, the confusion. Your body becomes a furnace and a swamp all at once. You shiver under blankets soaked with your own sweat. You cry out for water and then you throw it back up. Sometimes you hallucinate. Sometimes you hear your name being called by voices that aren't there. And as you fade, the bubo pulses beside you like a countdown. Everyone around you is waiting. Not for you to recover, but to see how long you'll last. Some last days. Others, only hours. But nearly all with the bubonic form of the plague ended the same way. With a groan, a rattle in the throat, and silence. And after that, your body gets dragged out, maybe burned, maybe dumped into a pit, maybe just left behind a locked door. The bubo never leaves alone. It takes everything with it. When nothing else works, people turn to God. And in the 14th century, everything turns to God. He is the judge, the jury, the executioner, and the last thread of hope in a world unraveling at the seams. The churches are full at first, packed with people clutching rosaries, chanting litanies, weeping on the stone floors. The air smells of sweat, wax, and desperation. Priests deliver sermons through cracked voices, telling their flocks this is a divine punishment for sin, that if they repent hard enough, pray long enough, flagellate thoroughly enough, they might be spared. But God is silent. The priests begin to die. The bishops follow. Monasteries fall quiet, not from reverence, but from rot. You go to Mass one day and find that half the congregation is missing. The next week, there's no priest. And the week after that, the church doors are locked, nailed shut with black crosses smeared in ash. In cities, the cathedrals fill with corpses laid before the altar. There's no space in the graveyards. Holy ground becomes landfill. Death stops respecting sacred places. The divine begins to feel indifferent. Still, people beg. They burn candles down to puddles of wax. They light fires outside the city walls. They wear charms, carry relics, swallow communion until they vomit. Mothers baptize their babies twice, just in case the first one didn't stick. People confess every day, terrified that one unspoken sin might cost them their soul. But even as they kneel, their bodies betray them. Buboes bloom beneath their robes. Their breath shortens as they sing hymns. They begin to realize something unthinkable. Their faith may not save them. Despair creeps in where devotion once lived. Some curse God, others curse themselves. A few abandon religion altogether, convinced that either God is too cruel to care or too weak to help. The churches, once sanctuaries, become morgues. The chants fade, the incense burns alone, and the bells, they toll without pause, a dirge that bleeds through every wall. And still, the plague comes. It doesn't flinch before icons. It doesn't pause for confession. It doesn't distinguish between sinner and saint. It moves through the world like judgment, but without justice. Prayers are whispered through cracked lips as another body hits the floor. And then silence. You begin to wonder if God ever heard you at all. The treatment begins before you even agree to it. You lie on a rough wooden bench, trembling from fever, the bubo under your arm a swollen knot of agony, and the local physician, or whatever passes for one, prepares the knives. No anesthesia, no explanation. Just a muttered prayer, a bowl, and the belief that letting out your blood might save your life. You scream when the blade touches skin, but he doesn't stop. Because in the 14th century, pain isn't a problem, it's part of the cure. Bloodletting is based on the ancient theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Disease, they believe, is caused by imbalance. You're sick because there's too much blood, or too much bad air, or not enough divine favor. The logic is brutal. Release the excess, and the body might recover. So they cut. They open veins, drain you into bowls, sometimes until you faint, sometimes until you never wake up again. The weak die faster. The strong just die slower. Alongside bloodletting comes the burning herbs, that is. Sage, juniper, rosemary, myrrh. Your home is filled with smoke so thick it makes your eyes water and your throat close. Not for comfort, for defense. They believe smoke purifies the air, that if you fill your lungs with the scent of lavender, the plague won't find room to settle in. So you burn everything. Bundles of dried flowers, animal dung, even sulfur, which stings your nostrils and paints the air in acid. The doctors mix ointments from crushed emeralds, lard, and wormwood. They tie toads to your sores. They prescribe vinegar baths and garlic compresses. One recommends powdered horn of a unicorn, though it's actually ground narwhal, if you're lucky enough to afford it. You drink concoctions of wine mixed with crushed snakes or dried roses, and when all else fails, they pray. Over your body, over your soul, over your grave. None of it works. If anything, it makes things worse. Bloodletting weakens you. The smoke suffocates you. The poultices infect your wounds. But still, it's better than doing nothing. Because nothing feels like surrender. And in a world where death knocks louder each day, even false hope is something to hold on to. You endure it all, the cuts, the stench, the burning in your lungs. You let them bleed you, blister you, boil your bedding, because the only thing scarier than a knife in your arm is knowing that, without it, you might die alone, unbled, untreated, untouched. When answers don't come, blame does. And in the chaos of the Black Death, it spreads faster than the plague itself. People want a target, someone to hold accountable, someone to hate, someone to punish. And when disease doesn't play by the rules, when doctors fail and prayers go unanswered, the whispers begin. First, quietly, then with fury. Someone must have brought this. Someone must be poisoning the wells. The plague, they say, isn't random, it's a plot. Foreigners are the first to be accused. Travelers, merchants, wandering musicians, anyone who doesn't look or speak like the locals. They're outsiders, and outsiders are always easy to blame. Then come the beggars, the lepers, the women who mutter to themselves in the marketplace. And of course the Jews, accused of poisoning rivers and bread, of summoning demons and hexing wells. Entire communities are slaughtered based on rumors alone. Lynch mobs form. Fires are lit. Synagogues are burned with families still inside. No trial, no defense, just death. In cities like Strasbourg, thousands are dragged from their homes and murdered, their homes looted, their bodies dumped into rivers. Even those who convert to Christianity are not spared. Their blood becomes scapegoat currency, traded for fear's satisfaction. And still, the plague doesn't stop. That's the cruelest part. You kill them, burn them, bury them, and nothing changes. But by then it's too late. The frenzy has already consumed reason. Hysteria replaces justice. Panic becomes religion. Governments issue proclamations. Inquisitors give permission. The killings are sanctioned. Clergy bless the executions. And the people cheer. Because fear, when fed enough, starts to look like righteousness. And in a world unraveling, cruelty often feels like control. You join the mob not because you hate, but because you're terrified. Because if it's their fault, then maybe it won't be yours. No one asks the right questions. No one notices the rats. No one watches the fleas. They're too busy chasing shadows and burning neighbors. The truth is too small to see. And so the plague keeps spreading, quietly, invisibly, while your town drowns itself in the blood of the innocent. And long after the bodies are gone, the shame remains. It begins with a cough. Just one. Dry at first, then deeper. Wet. You hear it from the next room. Someone you love, maybe your sister, your father, your child. You freeze, not because coughs are uncommon, but because now every sound from someone's throat feels like a verdict. You try to rationalize. Dust, cold air, a sore throat. But you already know. The way their eyes gloss over. The way they slump forward like something has suddenly drained out of them. Death has entered your home, and it didn't knock. It just walked in like it owned the place. At first, you pretend it's not happening. You bring broth, you wet a cloth, you whisper that it's just a fever, that it will pass. You don't want to believe it. Then the rash appears, then the bubo, then the smell. A sour, sweet rot that clings to the sheets, to their skin, to the very air. Your heart races every time you step into their room, unsure what you'll find. One moment they're lucid, asking for water. The next, they're convulsing, foaming at the mouth, bleeding from their gums. And you're helpless. There's no medicine, no antidote, no way to stop what's coming. You try herbs, you try prayers, you stay up all night pressing cool cloths to burning foreheads. Nothing helps. And still, you sit beside them, knowing what it means, knowing you might be next, because that cough, that breath, that sweat, you've already shared it. The air in your lungs has been theirs too. Death has come, not just for them, but for you as well. You start to notice it more in every home. A window shuttered that used to be open. A dog howling outside a house that's too quiet. A child standing alone, not crying, just waiting. Some people die in bed, others in the street. Some collapse in church, mid-prayer. Others vanish in the night and are found days later, stiff and bloated. The town changes shape with every passing hour. Doors are marked. Fences are tied shut. People leave food on steps without knocking. You stop greeting neighbors. You stop speaking at all. Because speaking means breathing, and breathing is now a risk. And when they die, it doesn't stop. You have to wrap them, move them, burn their clothes, drag their body to the edge of town, if you're brave. If you're too broken, you just lock the door and walk away. Leave the house to the silence and the rats. Leave the body to whatever waits in the dark. Because at some point it's not about love, it's about survival. And death never travels alone. There's no loyalty in a dying city, no noblesse oblige. When the plague arrives, the rich don't pray, they pack. Horse-drawn carriages roll out of the city before the second bell tolls. Lords, merchants, and doctors vanish behind the gates of country estates, leaving their servants to burn the linens and seal the doors. Wealth becomes a shield, not from the disease, but from its consequences. The poor, meanwhile, are left with nothing but firewood, fear, and empty promises. The rich retreat to clean air and wide fields. They seal themselves inside stone fortresses, tended to by hand-picked staff who are still healthy, for now. Meals are brought to them by gloved hands. Herbs are burned in every corridor. Letters are quarantined before being opened. They discuss survival while sipping wine in tapestried rooms, far from the stench of their dying cities. They write journals about the horrors they've escaped, never mentioning the people they left behind. Meanwhile, in the villages and tenements, the poor dig graves, dig ditches, dig through rubble looking for food. The marketplace is empty, the bread ovens are cold. There's no one left to work the mills or slaughter the pigs. Children wander the streets, covered in ash and filth. Women carry their dead husbands in carts, hoping someone will help. No one does. And the worst part? They don't even blame the rich. Not really, because suffering is all they've ever known. The plague didn't break the world. It just pulled back the curtain. The disparity is grotesque. While one family boards a barge to a villa in the hills, another family boards up their windows to wait for death. While nobles feast on salted meats and preserved wine, peasants fight over moldy bread and scraps of grain. The rich have priests on retainer and apothecaries on call. The poor have superstition, makeshift charms, and each other. And when the disease breaks through the gates of the estates, and it always does, the wealthy die cleaner, but no slower. This isn't a tragedy distributed equally, it's a hierarchy of horror. And the message is clear: gold buys distance, not safety. The wealthy think they've escaped. They haven't. They've only postponed the inevitable. The poor rot in public. The rich rot in private. But rot they do. There's a moment when the sound changes. Not a loud crack or a scream, but the absence of both. The village that once rang with church bells, hammer strikes, clucking hens, and children's laughter now murmurs only with wind. No carts creak, no fires crackle. The silence is not peace, it's vacancy. It's a hollow echo of life that once was. You walk through the center and see shutters drawn, doors hanging loose, a market stall with spoiled apples still sitting in baskets. not stolen, not eaten, just rotting, like everything else. Entire villages are gone. Not destroyed, just emptied. Homes still stand, but their souls have fled. Fields lie untilled. Wheat stalks brown and brittle, bending under the weight of dust. Livestock wander, unclaimed and unmilked, mooing into the void. Inside homes you'll find bowls still on tables, garments still folded, sometimes a game mid-play. Evidence of people who vanish not in panic but in sickness. They died too fast to run. And those who buried them died next. The silence isn't just lack of noise. It's the sound of a town forgetting how to live. Some of these places are avoided entirely. Locals say they're cursed, haunted by the souls of the unburied. Others dare to enter, scavenging shoes, tools, salted meats from cupboards left unlocked. But they do it fast, eyes down, breath held. Because even abandoned, these villages feel watched, as if the walls remember, as if the cobblestones know your name. There are thousands of these ghost settlements now, names wiped from maps, entire communities erased. The plague doesn't just kill people, it unthreads the very idea of a place. It hollows it out, leaves the skin intact, and dares someone to fill it again. Few do. The land grows wild. Ivy claims stone. Rain eats away thatched roofs. And soon there's no one left to remember who lived here, what they built, or how they died. And still, you walk through, unable to look away. Because in a world collapsing, the quiet isn't relief. It's a grave without a marker. You're thirsty. Everyone is. Clean water is rare now. Rivers are cloudy, wells are foul. Barrels of rainwater smell like something died inside. But thirst doesn't care. So, you dip your cup anyway. You close your eyes and drink. And then you wait. Because in the age of the Black Death, the thing that gives life might also take it away. Water is no longer safe. It looks clear sometimes, bubbling through the countryside, flowing under bridges. But upstream someone dumped a corpse, or 5. The body of a stranger, swollen and split, lies face down in the current. The disease doesn't need permission. It seeps from flesh to water, from water to lips, from lips to lungs. It doesn't matter how fast the stream runs or how cool it tastes. Once it's inside you, the clock starts ticking. Wells become battlegrounds. People guard them like gold. Fights break out. Water is hoarded. Rain is collected, filtered through cloth, blessed by priests, boiled, when there's firewood to spare. And still, it kills. Not just because it carries the plague, but because desperation makes people careless. They drink from ditches, from barrels that rats have fallen into, from puddles that stink of waste. The thirst overrides logic. The risk becomes irrelevant. And then there's the irony. Everyone says to wash, to cleanse the home, to clean the linens. But the water itself is cursed. You boil it only to burn your hands. You wash your wounds only to see them fester. You soak your fevered cloth in it, then press it to someone's brow, transferring death without knowing it. Even bathing is a gamble. Communal bathhouses close. People start to believe that washing opens the pores, inviting the sickness in. And maybe they're right, because those who wash seem to fall sick just as fast. The rivers, the wells, the basins, they all become traps. Sparkling lies under a dying sun. They promise relief. They deliver infection. But you can't avoid them. You need water to live. You need it to clean, to cook, to soothe. So you drink, you pray, and you hope that this time it doesn't carry death inside. But most of the time it does. There was a time when death was sacred, when the passing of a loved one meant bells tolled, candles flickered, and mourners gathered to whisper prayers into the air. There were coffins carved, processions walked, songs sung beneath cathedral ceilings. But now death is cheap. It comes too often, too fast, too loud. There are no rites, no grieving, no goodbyes. There's barely time to notice that someone's gone before their body is removed, if it's removed at all. You used to know the names of the dead. Now they're just numbers. 3 from the Tanner family. The butcher's apprentice. Another child from the mill house. Their bodies are wrapped in bed sheets, if anyone bothers. Dragged through the alleys on carts that creak under the weight of dozens. Thrown into pits with strangers. There is no priest standing above with Latin verse. No one blessing the ground. Just dirt. And more dirt. And the sound of shovels scraping bone. Mass graves are dug in haste. Wide, shallow trenches outside the city, filled layer by layer. When the pit is full, it's covered over quickly. Sometimes with lime, sometimes just with earth. Dogs sniff the edges. Rain uncovers limbs. Children dare each other to look inside. It stops being horrifying. It becomes ordinary. The churchyards are overflowing. The cemetery gates stay shut. Inside, bodies are stacked wall to wall, waiting for burial that may never come. The smell drifts through the streets. The flies gather. And when the living finally do try to perform last rites, they can't find a priest. He's either dead, dying, or somewhere hiding behind a locked door. Even the clergy have limits. Even faith runs out of strength. And if you're poor, your body might not be moved at all. You die in your bed. The door is shut, days pass, no one enters, the house becomes your coffin. Your corpse feeds the rats, the air, the insects. Your name is never recorded. No one lights a candle, no one weeps. Your death is not remembered, it's erased. A whisper that fades before anyone thinks to listen. This is the end, not with mourning, but with silence. Not with ceremony, but with indifference. You lived, you died, and now you rot in a pit full of strangers. You hear them before you see them, the soft clang, the slow rhythm. Not a melody, not a warning, a dirge in motion. Bell ringers walk the streets, swinging iron clappers from side to side, calling attention to the presence of the dead. Bring out your dead, they shout, again and again, until it no longer sounds like a command but a chant, hollow and mechanical. The bell tolls not for ceremony but for collection. These are the men who gather the bodies, not priests, not gravediggers. Just whoever is still strong enough to pull a cart and numb enough to endure the smell. They move house to house, wrapped in rags soaked in vinegar, sleeves over their mouths, faces pale and blank. They knock once. If no one answers, they enter anyway. They know the signs. A shutter nailed shut, a black mark smeared on the door, the stench that no fire can mask. They find the dead, hoist them onto the cart, and ring the bell again. Onward. No prayers, no time, just bodies being removed like refuse. Each cart groans under the weight. Children, elders, lovers, strangers, piled without distinction. Sometimes they're still warm. Sometimes they move. Not enough to survive, just enough to make someone hesitate. But there is no mercy left. They are taken, placed among the rest, and the bell keeps ringing. People fear the bell more than the cough. The sound means death is near. It means your street is next. Mothers hush their children when it approaches. Doors are bolted, curtains drawn. But it never stops. Even in your sleep you hear it. Even when you try to forget, it echoes. You can't run from the bell. It marks the passage of time in an era where hours no longer matter. Morning, noon, night. They blend into one long toll. The bell ringers do not speak. They do not weep. Some believe they are cursed. Others think they are blessed too useful to die. They rarely last long. The plague takes them eventually, and then someone else picks up the bell, because the dead keep coming, and someone has to answer. This is what it means to live during the plague. You count your days by the sound of a bell that never rings for the living. They come barefoot, bleeding and singing. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, marching through the center of town in a slow, rhythmic procession of pain. The flagellants. Men who believe that if God won't spare them, maybe they can suffer their way into his favor. They strip to the waist, robes trailing behind, backs torn and red from lash after lash. Each strike leaves welts. Each welt splits open. The air smells of iron, sweat, incense, and desperation. They chant as they move, voices low and hypnotic, Latin prayers spilling from cracked lips. They don't ask permission to enter your town. They appear like ghosts, then flood the streets. People line up to watch, not with joy but with reverence, with fear. Children cry. Mothers cross themselves. Merchants close their stalls. You stand still, eyes wide, unsure if you are watching salvation or madness. The flagellants stop in the town square. They form a circle. One by one, they fall to their knees, whip themselves across the back. Each strike louder than the last. The leader reads aloud from a wooden board. Rules of conduct, pledges of purity, demands for repentance. They claim the plague is punishment for sin. Yours, theirs, everyone's. They bleed so that others might be spared. That's the idea, at least. But it doesn't work. They stay for days, preaching, whipping, spreading fear like a second plague. Sometimes they accuse. A widow, a merchant, a foreigner. They say the person is impure. The crowd agrees, someone vanishes. The flagellants move on. To the next town, the next square, leaving behind nothing but blood on the stones and silence in their wake. Not everyone believes in them. The church grows wary. These processions are too powerful, too dramatic, too unrestrained. Some bishops condemn them. Some towns block their entrances, but still, they come. Still, they walk barefoot across the countryside, cloaked in fanaticism, dripping with faith and blood. Because in a world where death is everywhere, pain starts to feel like purpose, and the only thing louder than a bell ringing for the dead is a crowd crying for forgiveness with open wounds. At first, they came bravely, dressed in thick leather robes, masks stuffed with mint and cloves, eyes hidden behind glass. They walked the streets with purpose, treating the sick, recording the dead, offering comfort with a measured tone and gloved hand. They had books, they had theories, they had confidence. Now, they're gone. Some vanished overnight, packed their things and rode for the countryside. Others locked themselves inside and refused to answer the door. A few were found slumped in alleyways, their masks shattered, their bodies still clutching bloodied instruments. The doctors have started quitting, not just from fatigue, but from despair, because the more they try, the worse it gets. The plague doesn't listen to logic. It mocks their leeches, their ointments, their colored potions. It slips through cracks in their theories and infects them just the same. Those who stay are few, their eyes hollow, their movements slow. Their hands tremble when they touch you. They treat fewer patients, speak less, sleep even less. They carry the knowledge of 1,000 deaths in their silence, and worst of all, they know they might be next. No mask, no herb, no robe is enough. The plague finds them anyway. The people notice. Trust starts to rot. If even the doctors flee, what hope is left? The sick beg in the streets, but no one answers. A mother cradles her child, crying for help, but the windows stay shut. You knock on the healer's door, only to hear muffled weeping from within. You are on your own. Some desperate towns offer gold to any who will serve. Some chain the doctors inside the cities, threatening them with death if they try to leave. But how do you force a man to face what terrifies him? How do you compel someone to walk willingly into a house where the walls bleed? Eventually, there are no more doctors, just charlatans, wandering apothecaries with glass eyes and trembling hands selling bottled lies. Snake oil, vinegar wine, a holy tincture blessed by relics. They'll tell you anything. And maybe you believe them, because you need to. Because in a world where even the doctors are running, hope is just another mask that started to crack. You hear the rumors long before it happens. First, it's just a whisper about a family sealed into their home. Not locked in, not warned, sealed with bricks. The door filled in like a tomb. Then the whispers get louder. It happened again and again. A child coughed. A grandmother had a fever. The guards came at night. And by morning, the house was a wall. This is quarantine in the Middle Ages. Not a red zone, not a hospital, not a polite request to stay inside. It's mortar and stone. Once the town suspects you're infected, you're no longer a person. You're a threat. So they eliminate the risk by eliminating you. Not with knives or fire, but with bricks and silence. You wake up to hammering outside your door, shouts, orders, and then the light begins to vanish, stone by stone, until the only illumination left comes from your own panic. Inside, you try to reason. You shout through the walls. You swear you're not sick, but no one's listening. The decision is made. You and your family are sealed in. Maybe someone leaves food outside. Maybe they don't. And even if they do, it won't last long. Water runs out. Air goes stale. The walls close in. You try not to think about what comes next. Some scratch through wood, trying to escape. Some scream until their voices disappear. Others simply lie down and wait. One day becomes 2, then 3. By the end of the week there is silence, no movement, no sound, just a house with a solid wall where a door used to be. Neighbors avoid walking past. Children are told not to speak of it. Everyone knows what's inside, or what was. Eventually, the smell tells the truth. And maybe, if enough time passes, the bricks are removed. But not before everyone inside has already vanished into the air, into the stone, into memory. Quarantine isn't mercy, it's containment, it's control, it's how fear pretends to be order. And when the plague returns again, they'll do it all over. New walls, new screams, new silence. Because when people are desperate to survive, they'll choose bricks over blood, even if it means watching their neighbors disappear behind them. There is no mercy for mothers in the plague years, no shield of motherhood, no sacred protection. The disease takes them, just like it takes everyone else, but slower sometimes, more cruelly, because when a mother falls sick, she doesn't think of herself. She thinks of the child still suckling at her breast. The infant who doesn't know to run from fever, who reaches for warmth even as it poisons them. The records tell of it, the stories whisper it. That one day, a mother feels the heat crawling up her back, the aches in her joints, the swell under her arm. And the next, her milk runs dark, sour, tainted by the rot inside her. The baby doesn't know. It drinks. It feeds on love turned lethal. And the mother, too weak to stop it, weeps, not just for the pain, but for the knowledge that her body, once a vessel of life, is now a source of death. The infant cries all night, then not at all. Some women abandon their babies before the sickness takes hold, a desperate kind of mercy. Others try to fight it, wrapping themselves in herbs, smearing themselves with holy oils, praying to saints who no longer answer. Some midwives whisper secrets, old cures. None of them work. The buboes come anyway, the fever climbs anyway, and in the cradle the infant watches, and soon follows. There is no dignity in this kind of death, only heartbreak, only horror. A mother's last moment spent holding something she knows she's doomed. She sings lullabies with cracked lips, tries to smile through broken teeth, and then slips into silence, the child tucked against her, waiting for the same fate. And no one comes to help. The neighbors won't enter. The priest avoids the house. The windows are nailed shut. Eventually, a cart comes. The bodies are taken out together. A bundle of limbs, a still breast. A child no longer crying. No record, no names. Just another story of the plague, repeated 1,000 times, whispered behind hands, buried under dirt. There are no saints for these women, no miracles, no monuments, just ghosts with empty arms. At first, the nightmares came only at night, the fever dreams, the visions, the images of skeletal hands reaching through the walls. You'd wake in a cold sweat, heart racing, whispering a prayer to chase them away. But over time, something shifted. The line between dreams and daylight began to blur. You start seeing things. Shadows that move without wind, faces in windows that were empty a second ago. Your nightmares don't wait for sleep anymore. They follow you through the day. Because when you live surrounded by death, horror stops feeling extraordinary. It becomes routine. A body in the street, you step around it. A scream in the night, you roll over and try to ignore it. The nightmares stop being shocking. They become wallpaper, soundtrack, background noise. And worst of all, you begin to forget what peace ever felt like. People talk to themselves now, mutter prayers out loud, not because they're pious, but because silence is worse. Children stop crying, not from bravery, but because they've forgotten how. You wake up and forget what day it is, not from age, but from repetition. Nothing changes. The air stays heavy. The skies stay gray. The stench stays thick. Your dreams are full of fire, rats, shadows, teeth. You run, but never escape. You scream, but no sound comes out. And sometimes, even the healthy break. A man walks into the town square and laughs until he collapses. A woman is found rocking an empty bundle for days. A boy stares into the well and says nothing. Not even when spoken to. You think you'll be different. You think you're strong. But then you go a week without speaking to anyone alive. Then another. And the dreams start to bleed through again. You dream of bells, of blood, of walls closing in. You dream of eyes, watching, blinking, open even in death. And when you wake, you're not sure if you were dreaming at all. The images stay, the feelings linger. You stop trusting your senses. You stop trusting your memory. You stop trusting yourself. Because surviving the Black Death isn't just about avoiding infection. It's about surviving the nightmare that doesn't end when you open your eyes. Before the plague, paintings were full of angels and saints, of kings on thrones and Christ in glory. Light streamed from halos. Colors bloomed with gold leaf. But now, things are different. The brush turns darker, grimmer. The canvas is no longer a celebration, it's a warning. You see it first on the church walls. Murals of dancing skeletons, dance macabre, arms linked with bishops, merchants, peasants, children, all equal, all grinning, all dead. The message is simple, no one escapes. Death doesn't care about your status, it comes for everyone, and it will dance with you in the end. In manuscripts, saints begin to look more skeletal. Their robes hang loose on sunken bodies, their eyes look hollow. Artists draw plague scenes in chilling detail, piles of corpses, open sores, blackened limbs. No longer allegory, now it's documentation. A visual diary of despair. You see robed doctors with bird-like masks, mothers holding dead infants, entire cities bowing under the shadow of a scythe. Even religious art shifts. Christ isn't triumphant anymore, he suffers. The Virgin weeps. Heaven looks far away. Purgatory feels close. Hell becomes vivid, flames, torment, endless screams. Artists aren't imagining punishment, they're witnessing it. They live in it, so they paint it. And outside the monasteries and cathedrals, graffiti spreads, on walls, on carts, on stones, skulls, crossbones, messages carved into wood. The end is near. We all must die. Even tombstones change. Less about remembrance, more about fear. People want others to see their graves and know what took them. They engrave images of the plague, buboes, bones, birds. This isn't just art anymore. It's therapy, it's protest, it's survival. A way to scream without words, to capture the nightmare before it's forgotten. Because somewhere deep down, even in the heart of horror, people still want to leave a mark, to say, I was here, I saw this, and it was real. And long after the plague fades, the art remains. And when future generations look at it, they won't see saints or miracles. They'll see rot, they'll see grief, they'll see truth. At some point, you decide to run. Everyone does. It doesn't matter how many windows you've sealed, how many herbs you've burned, or how many prayers you've whispered into the floorboards. Eventually, the smell becomes too strong, the silence too loud, the death too close. So you pack what you can, bread, water, whatever coin you haven't buried, and you flee. But the road isn't freedom. It's just a different kind of danger. The moment you leave the town gates, you're no longer a citizen. You're a refugee, a stranger, a possible threat. Villages turn you away. Guards at city walls shout warnings. No entry, no exceptions. You plead. Show your children, your sick wife. Doesn't matter. You could bring the sickness, you might already carry it. And so the gates remain shut, the drawbridge up, the spears pointed at your heart. So you sleep outside, under trees, in the dirt, in abandoned barns and burnt-out hovels. You share the night with rats, with wolves, with whatever ghosts still linger near the roads. Sometimes you travel with others. Other times you pass lone figures sitting silently beside their carts, their eyes empty, their hands holding on to nothing. Bandits come in the night, not to rob, but to scavenge. They want your food, your water, maybe your shoes. They don't need to kill you. The plague might do that for them. And yet, the worst isn't the cold, or the hunger, or even the fear. It's the realization that there is nowhere to go. Every town is either burning or bricked. The plague is behind you, ahead of you, beside you. You thought you could outrun it, but it has no borders. It rides the wind. It follows the same roads you do. It doesn't need to knock on the gates. It climbs over the walls. You hear of safe havens, mountain villages untouched, distant islands sealed tight. But by the time you get close, they're either gone or locked tight. And even if you did find one, how long could it last? One cough, one mistake, one rat in the grain cart, and it all begins again. So you keep walking. Not to escape, just to move. Just to feel like you're doing something. You become a ghost before you die, wandering, watching, waiting. One of thousands drifting between cities that no longer exist and hope that's too thin to hold on to. There's no disinfectant, no bleach, no sterilization. So, when the plague touches something, anything, you burn it. That's the rule. If someone dies in a bed, you burn the mattress. If they wore a cloak, you burn the cloak. If they touched a cup, a chair, a curtain, it goes into the fire, and if there's no firewood, you use furniture. You rip doors off hinges, smash tables, feed the flames whatever you have, because ashes don't carry disease. Smoke becomes a daily part of life. Pillars of it rising from the edges of town, from streets, from rooftops. The smell of burning wool, linen, hair, sometimes flesh. It's not just belongings people burn, they burn bodies. Sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of panic, sometimes out of fear that the corpse might still breathe, might still move, might still spread. Fire is purification. Fire is control. Fire is the only thing that seems stronger than the plague. When a house becomes a nest of sickness, the neighbors douse it in oil and set it alight. No time to check if someone's still inside. They burn the walls, the floors, the roof, and they watch the flames eat what once was a home. And somehow, it feels like mercy. You start burning things before they're even touched, just in case. A letter from your cousin, into the fire. A gift from your aunt, burn it. Your own shoes. If you stepped in the wrong place, gone. Whole marketplaces are torched. Cloth stalls, food carts. Even entire city districts cleared by fire in the name of health. There is no mourning, just smoke, just ash. Just people standing in the streets, eyes stinging, mouths covered, watching the air fill with what they used to own. What they used to love. Eventually, you stop feeling anything. You drop another bundle into the fire and don't even flinch. You watch the orange glow rise against the night sky and feel nothing but relief. Relief that at least this thing, this one thing, can still be destroyed. Because when death is invisible, fire is the only thing that reminds you it can be fought at all. There comes a moment when it's clear the living are no longer running the world. The dead are, not by force, not by choice, simply by weight. Their sheer numbers tip the balance. The living move through cities now owned by corpses. Streets once buzzing with voices and carts now echo with silence and flies. Doors swing on broken hinges. Inside, the dead rest wherever they fell. On chairs, in beds, under tables, huddled in corners with hands still clutched in prayer. No one dares move them anymore. Not because of reverence, but because there's no one left to care. It's not just the people. The systems are dead too. There's no council, no guards, no taxes, no laws. Bakers don't bake. Blacksmiths don't forge. Nobles stop giving orders. Priests stop holding mass. Even the dogs know something is wrong. They howl not from hunger, but from confusion, as if sensing the chain of command has snapped. The rhythm of life is gone. In its place, stasis, paralysis, the illusion of motion, like a puppet dancing with no strings. Those still alive shuffle through it all, careful not to touch anything. Not the door handles, not the cloth, definitely not the bodies. They step wide around them, eyes down, hearts numb. It's not fear anymore, it's protocol, routine, a grotesque kind of etiquette. You begin to see death everywhere, in statues, in shadows, in the way the trees bend under the weight of vultures. It speaks louder than the living. The dead outnumber the living in some towns 10-1, and the few who remain don't bury anymore. They can't. They drag, they burn, or they simply shut the doors and walk away. And so the world becomes a mausoleum, an open-air crypt. Time stops, seasons blur, and memory too begins to fade. Who was that man who owned the bakery? What was your neighbor's name? You remember the smell of her stew, but not her voice. Faces blend together. You forget who lived where, who died first, who is still holding on, because when the dead are in charge, everything else becomes background noise. You would think there'd be no room for love during the Black Death. No time for it, no energy, no purpose. But love clings harder when the world falls apart. Sometimes it's desperate. A final embrace, a reckless kiss between two people who know they're both infected. Sometimes it's quiet, a glance across a smoky room, fingers brushing as they share a crust of bread, holding hands while waiting for the fever to decide who goes first. People fall in love faster now. They don't wait for letters or dowries or blessings from the church. They don't care about lineage or land or name. They care about warmth, about eyes that don't flinch, about a body that's still breathing. In some towns, lovers marry in the streets. A whispered vow, a shared drink, a night wrapped in each other under the stars because there may not be another. And yet, the plague doesn't spare lovers. It never has. One falls ill, the other stays, holds them through the tremors, wipes their face with shaking hands, refuses to leave, even when warned, even when begged. They die together more often than apart, sometimes within hours, sometimes holding hands, and their story becomes another tragic line in a growing epic of sorrow. But love doesn't just exist in romance. Families cling tighter. Friends make promises. A parent sings lullabies with a cracked voice. A brother carries his dying sister on his back for miles, just in case someone, somewhere, might help. You see it in the smallest things, in someone giving up their last loaf of bread, and someone choosing to stay behind, knowing it's a death sentence. Because in times like these, love is rebellion. To care is to resist the plague's one true goal, to turn humans into ghosts before they die. Love keeps you human, even if it ends in heartbreak, even if it ends in a shared grave. And when the songs are sung years later, these are the stories people will remember. Not the numbers, not the names, the ones who loved, even when they had no reason to. Even the gravedigger has a limit. He was one of the last still working. Every morning before the sun cracked the horizon, he'd be out there. Shovel in hand, sleeves rolled up, boots heavy with mud. His arms moved like clockwork, swinging down into the earth, pulling it up again. Grave after grave, pit after pit. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just dug. You'd see him from your window, a silhouette against the rising fog, a grim monument to necessity. Some said he was cursed, others said blessed, but no one envied him, not even the desperate. At first, the work was manageable, a few burials a day. Then it became dozens, then hundreds. Whole trenches dug in silence, bodies lowered without names. He started to lose track. Who had he buried today, yesterday? Did it matter? They all looked the same, bloated, blackened, frozen in twisted shapes that no longer resembled the people they once were. Then came the day he stopped digging. He just stood there, stared at the pile of bodies slumped near the edge of the trench, hands stiff, face blank. His shovel slipped from his fingers and landed in the mud with a dull thud. He turned around and walked away, past the graves, past the chapel, past the shocked stares of the townspeople who had once trusted him to handle what they could not. He didn't say a word. He simply disappeared. They found him days later, sitting by the river, arms folded, eyes wide, not dead, just empty. The plague hadn't touched his body, but it had eaten his mind. No one replaced him. There was no one left to do the job. The bodies kept coming, so people stopped burying. They piled the dead outside the gates. They shut them in rooms. They prayed the smell would fade. It didn't. Because even the gravedigger, the one who had faced death the longest, could only carry so much. Eventually, even he broke. And when that happened, the town understood. There was no more bottom, no more structure, no more order, only rot. They thought they were safe behind stone walls. Monasteries, holy sanctuaries, isolated and serene, places where the world's noise couldn't penetrate. The monks prayed, copied texts, tended gardens. They cared for the sick from afar, offering masses, lighting candles, sending alms. Some opened their gates to the dying, believing charity would shield them. Others shut themselves in, trusting silence and God to protect them. But the plague didn't need an invitation. It came in with a delivery cart, with a sick visitor begging for mercy, with a rat that slipped through a crack in the cellar wall, and once it was in, there was no escape. At first, they tried to hold their rituals. The bells rang for matins and vespers, the incense burned, chants echoed through cloisters, but the voices grew thinner. A monk collapsed mid-psalm. Another never made it back from the herb garden. The scriptorium fell silent. The library, once bustling with quills and parchment, now reeked of fever and fear. The monks did not run. They had taken vows: poverty, chastity, obedience, and now death. They buried each other in the very gardens they once tended. They wept quietly in their cells. Some prayed harder. Others lost faith. One monk scratched a confession into the wall with a nail. "We are all gone. God forgive me. I did not fear until it was too late." And eventually, the chanting stopped. Some monasteries became tombs, doors locked from within, no one ever emerging. Others were found weeks later by travelers, empty except for bones and Bibles, scrolls stained with blood, wax still melted on the altar, birds nesting in the rafters. The church, shaken to its core, couldn't explain it. How the most devout, the most disciplined, the most pure had fallen just like the rest. They tried to call it a trial, a test, a divine mystery. But the truth was simpler. The plague did not care. It saw no holiness in robes. It saw no protection in prayer. And as the monks fell, their voices joined the growing silence of a world where even God's scribes had no words left to give. You can't outrun the smell. It's not just in the streets or homes or fields. It's in you now, in your clothes, in your mouth. You wake with it in your nose and go to sleep with it in your lungs. The scent of the Black Death is unlike anything else. Rot, mold, sour sweat, burned herbs, and something sweet underneath it all. A sickly, cloying sweetness that turns your stomach. Like honey gone bad. Like fruit left too long in the sun beside something dead. The smell is the first thing you notice when you enter a new town. You don't need to ask if the plague has been there. You smell it in the alleys, in the abandoned homes, in the breath of the survivors. It becomes a signal, a warning, a voice that whispers, "Leave now, or you won't leave at all." But you can't always leave. Sometimes it's already in your home. Then your nose adjusts. You stop noticing it every second. But that's worse, because it means it's won. It owns you. People try everything to fight it. Bundles of herbs hang over every door. Pans of vinegar steam on every fire. People carry pouches of lavender, rose petals, sage, stuffed into masks, sleeves, hair, mouths. Anything to cover the scent. It doesn't work. The plague seeps through. The stench penetrates waxed robes, prayer beads, locked doors. Even the plague doctors, wrapped in leather and herbs, reek of it. And when someone dies, the smell thickens. The body changes fast, bloating, blackening, leaking. The fluids pool. The heat releases it. A single corpse can turn an entire street. And there are thousands of them, some burned, some buried, some not. You try to avoid breathing through your nose. You tie cloth to your face. You burn incense until your eyes sting. But still, the smell finds a way in. You begin to associate it with memory. The smell of your mother's shawl, now fouled. The scent of baked bread, now drowned in death. The smell of your home, forever ruined. There's no comfort left, only reminders. And you realize something terrible. Even if the plague ends, even if you live, the smell will remain. Because the air itself remembers. You've run out of options, so you look up. Not to the stars, not to the sky. To the ceiling beams of a church, or the cracked icon in your home, or the worn wood of your rosary. Anything that might link you to the divine. Because when medicine fails, when fire fails, when walls and distance and silence all fail, maybe God hasn't. Maybe he's waiting, watching. Maybe this is a test, or a punishment, or a mistake he might still undo. So you bargain. You promise to be better, to confess everything. You swear you'll stop lying, drinking, stealing, thinking the wrong things. You make vows. If he spares you, you'll give up everything. You'll live in a cave. You'll never speak again. You'll join a monastery. You'll never look another person in the eye. You'll crawl on your knees to the next holy site. Just please, don't let me die. You give offerings, your last coin, your best bread, your child's favorite toy. You carve prayers into your doorframe. You walk barefoot to shrines. You wear sackcloth. You weep in front of statues so weathered they barely look human. You kneel on stone until your knees split open. You light candles every night until your home flickers like a tomb. And when that doesn't work, you beg louder. Some people gather in groups, whipping themselves raw in the streets, chanting, screaming, hoping the blood will earn forgiveness, hoping the agony will buy them time. Others accuse, burn witches, blame sinners, offer the lives of others as payment. Maybe if they're sacrificed, you'll be spared. But most people just break. They stop praying. They stop hoping. They look up and see nothing. They realize that whatever power watches from above, it has already made its decision, or never cared to begin with. And then, silence. The candles burn low. The altars grow dusty. The bells fall quiet. God no longer answers. Or maybe he never did. And all you're left with are your promises. Unfulfilled, desperate, fading. Deals you were never in a position to make. You thought it was over. The death toll slowed. The air felt lighter. The smell faded, at least a little. Survivors began to whisper about rebuilding, reopening, even rejoicing. A priest held mass again. A merchant reopened his stall. A child laughed out loud just once, and people wept from hearing it. It wasn't joy, not really, but it was the shadow of what joy might feel like. Maybe it had passed. Maybe God had moved on. But the plague hadn't. It was never gone. Just quiet, watching, waiting. And now it returns, not like a whisper but like a scream, louder, harsher, crueler. You see the first sign in a boy's cough, then in a fever that burns through an entire family in a night, then in the bells. Those damn bells ringing again like they'd never stopped. The pits open once more, the carts return, the smell reawakens. This second wave is worse than the first. Not just because of the bodies, but because of the betrayal. Hope had started to bloom, and now it's crushed underfoot like everything else. The people who lived through the first wave are more fragile now, not stronger. They've seen too much. There's no resilience, only exhaustion. The survivors begin to fall. The ones who dug the graves, tended the sick, made it out the first time. They go fast. Their bodies are tired, their minds too splintered to resist. Some don't even fight. They see the signs and simply lie down. Villages that had started to recover are emptied again. Monasteries, repopulated with new monks, go silent once more. The scribes stop writing. The bells toll like they're trying to break time itself. And this time, no one is surprised. There's no panic. Just grim acceptance. Like watching a tide roll in, knowing you built your home too close to the shore. You stand there as it rises and think, of course, it came back. Because the Black Death never really leaves, it just learns how to return more efficiently. They don't have crayons, they don't need them. They use sticks, ash, bits of charcoal, the ends of burned wood, on walls, on the sides of homes, in the dirt outside shuttered chapels. Children, too young to fully understand, draw what they see. What they know, not castles, not horses, not sun and flowers. They draw boxes, crosses, hollow faces, rats, bodies with X's for eyes, lines of people holding hands as they fall into holes, a child's version of horror, filtered through innocence. At first, adults try to stop them. Draw something else, they say, something happy. But there is no happy left, only real, only now. So the children draw what's real: graves, plague doctors, mothers with swollen faces, skies filled with ash. One little girl draws herself next to her sister, then scratches the sister out. Again, and again, and again. The drawings appear everywhere, on pews, on floors, on fences. Sometimes they're erased, but they come back. Sometimes they're carved into wood with nails. Sometimes painted in soot. The youngest children say they don't remember anything before the plague, that this is the world, that this is what childhood is supposed to look like. You start to understand that they're right. Games change too. Children gather not to play tag, but to reenact funerals. One lies down, the others whisper prayers. Then they switch. They build miniature coffins from twigs, fill them with dead mice, line them up by the well. It's not morbid to them, it's normal, it's mimicry, it's grief, rehearsed until it feels routine. No one teaches them how to mourn, they learn by watching, and their art becomes the only language they have. A silent gallery of trauma smeared across the town's bones. Some of them don't even speak anymore, they just draw. And when they grow older, if they grow older, they won't remember why they started, only that it never really stopped. Because for these children, death isn't the end, it's the beginning of memory. You don't sleep anymore, not really. You close your eyes and something else opens. Something inside your head that shows you visions too sharp to be dreams, and too twisted to be real. You see faces you know, but they're rotting. You hear voices calling your name in languages no one alive should speak. You smell blood and smoke, even under the covers. The darkness behind your eyes becomes a theater of nightmares, and the curtain never falls. You dream of demons now. They don't have horns, they don't breathe fire, they look like people. Sometimes they are people, your mother, your lover, your priest. But something's wrong. Their eyes are missing, their mouths are too wide, they move without sound, they float, they whisper riddles, they tell you who will die next. Sometimes the demons take you by the hand, show you things, cities drowned in blood, oceans of ash, rats the size of dogs, a world that looks like yours, but emptied. Everyone gone, just fire and bone. You wake up gasping, soaked in sweat, your fingernails dug into your palms so hard you bled in your sleep. And the worst part? The dream feels true. And maybe it is, because you start seeing those same shadows during the day, in the corners of your vision, in your home, in your church, behind the trees. They vanish when you look straight at them, but you know they were there. You feel them, you smell them. Sometimes they laugh. The priests say it's the devil's work, that the plague opened a door, that the world is thin now and something is slipping through. Others say it's just fever, hallucination, the result of too many days without food, sleep, or silence. But deep down, you know the truth. The demons were always there. The plague just stripped away the things that kept them out. You no longer fear dying, you fear dreaming. Because in your dreams you see the world that comes after this one. And it's not better, it's worse, and it wants you to see it. They were the first to bring it. The messengers, the carriers, you cursed them, feared them, hunted them, but now even they are dying. You find them in corners, belly up, legs stiff, blood leaking from the mouth. In cellars, in barns, under beds, silent and still. Their black fur matted, their eyes glazed over, and somehow it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like something worse. Because if the rats are dying, what does that mean for you? The plague doesn't need them anymore. It's evolved, moved on. It no longer waits for rats to travel, for fleas to leap. Now it spreads through breath, through air, through contact. The rats are just leftovers, abandoned tools. And when the plague is done with something, it destroys it. Efficiently, thoroughly. The dogs start dying next, then the cats. The birds vanish. The world grows quiet, not from healing, but from absence. Nature pulls back. The crows stay, of course. They always do. But the rats, your constant companions in this hell, are going. Their squeaks are gone. Their nests empty. Their tunnels silent. You realize, in a sick way, you miss them. Not for what they were, but for what they represented. The beginning. The moment before everything fell apart. When you still believed you could fight it. Burn it. Outrun it. Now, the plague no longer needs a vehicle. It has you. You are the new rat. You move from house to house, unknowingly carrying it. You speak, and it spreads. You touch, and it infects. You breathe, and it continues. The plague doesn't need claws or fur anymore. It has hands, eyes, feet. It has you. And the dying rats become a final omen, proof that this isn't ending, it's just changing. Becoming more efficient, more human, more permanent. The church was once the pillar of your life. Its bells rang you awake, its priests baptized your children. Its walls held your weddings, its stones whispered your sins into forgiveness. It was where the living sought guidance and the dead were granted rest. But now the church is dying, not in spirit, in bodies. At first, the priests were brave. They stood by the sickbeds, gave last rites, whispered psalms to blistered ears, but faith doesn't stop infection. And one by one, the clergy fell. The bishop buried 3 of his priests, then was buried by the 4th. And then, there was no one left to speak the prayers. The pulpits went quiet. The incense burned down to ash. The doors swung open to an empty nave. You find corpses still wearing vestments, collapsed beside altars, slumped over chalices, robes soaked in sweat and blood. Sacred books lie open to unread verses. The candles melt into puddles of wax on stone floors. The choir stalls are empty, the echoes of their hymns fading like breath in cold air. And the bells? They toll for themselves now, dragged by ropes pulled by the dying or rigged to swing in endless mechanical sorrow. Parishioners come in search of comfort, but there is no one to greet them. No one to bless the dying, no one to bury the dead. Graves are dug in the churchyards by anyone still able to lift a spade. Often it's children. Sometimes it's no one at all. The bodies are left in pews, behind altars, stacked in the crypts. The church begins to smell not of incense, but of rot. The house of God becomes a morgue, and the faith that once seemed so solid begins to crack. Some believe God has turned his face away. Others say the priests were punished for pride. Some grow angry, others silent. But all understand one thing: the church cannot save you. It cannot even save itself. And so you light a candle in the dark, alone. Not because someone told you to, not because it will help, but because it's the last thing left to do. You didn't die. You didn't collapse in the street. You didn't rot in a corner. You didn't go cold and silent in a pile of strangers. You lived. But surviving the plague isn't the same as being alive. Your heart still beats, but everything around it has changed. You don't laugh anymore. You flinch at every cough. You sleep with one eye open. Your hands shake when you light a candle. Your dreams are stitched with blood and shadows. The people who knew you before, if any, are still breathing, say your name like it's a ghost. And maybe it is. You walk with the same body, but it doesn't feel like yours. Not after everything it's seen. Touched, buried. The house you return to is too quiet, too clean, too full of memory. You pass the empty chair where your father sat, the burnt hearth your mother prayed beside, the corner where your brother took his last breath. You try to scrub the walls, but the stains don't come out. You open windows, but the air still smells like endings. You don't talk about it. No one does. What is there to say? That you watched your neighbors collapse? That you buried 3 family members in a single day? That you whispered apologies to the dead while pretending to be brave? The world wants to move on. Fields must be plowed, bread must be baked, life must resume. But inside you're frozen, hollowed. The simplest things feel impossible. Joy is foreign. Touch is terrifying. Noise is unbearable. You walk through a landscape of ruins wearing a mask called normal. And sometimes you think, maybe I didn't survive, not really, and yet you keep breathing. You carry water, you light the fire, you plant seeds, you look at the sky and wonder if it might be blue again one day. You speak softly, you weep privately, you keep going. Because that's all you know. And because the world, though scarred, hasn't stopped. Not completely, you survived. But you're not okay, and maybe, for now, that's enough. In a twisted, backhanded way, the plague creates opportunity, but only after the bodies are cold. Fields lie empty, shops are locked, workshops silent. There are fewer hands to pull carts, till soil, bake bread, sew clothes. Suddenly, those who are left are worth something. A peasant who once toiled for a scrap of bread now demands coin. A carpenter charges triple. A maid refuses to work without shoes and meat. The hierarchy cracks. Lords offer land to men who once bowed to them. And for the first time, the poor taste power. But power without structure is chaos. With half the population gone, laws mean less than survival. What's a rule when no one is left to enforce it? What's a sin when the priest is dead and the chapel is full of bones? People take what they need, food, clothing, shelter. Then they take what they want. Gold, wine, neighbors' land. Gangs form, towns splinter. Petty kings rise in the ruins of cities. Morality, once policed by fear and religion, now floats in ambiguity. What was once forbidden becomes tolerated. What was once shocking becomes mundane. And not all the change is wicked. Some survivors throw off old roles. Women take on trades. Former slaves vanish into the wilderness to build their own lives. But for every person grasping freedom, another grasps excess, decadence, violence. The line between justice and revenge blurs. Between celebration and debauchery, between rebuilding and ravaging. Funeral feasts turn into week-long drinking bouts. Weddings are rushed, torn garments turned into makeshift veils. People marry out of loneliness, lust, or the sheer thrill of still being alive. Children are conceived before the dirt even settles on the last grave. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so why wait for it? The church tries to intervene. The nobles try to restore order, but fear no longer works the same. Once you've stared into the mouth of the plague and come out the other side, threats sound smaller. Judgment seems further away. The world doesn't just rebuild, it mutates. And when the dead are finally buried, what rises in their place is not the same world they left behind. Even when the last wave fades, even when the sickness stops knocking, the world does not roar back to life. It limps, slowly, cautiously. And with half of it gone, the silence is overwhelming. Streets stretch without footsteps. Doors open onto emptiness. Fields bloom without farmers to harvest them. Forests creep closer to villages. Wolves and wind fill the space where laughter and labor once lived. You walk through your town and recognize every building, but none of the faces. Or worse, you recognize none at all. You used to wave at the baker's wife, barter with the weaver, share soup with the old man on the corner. Now, their windows are dark, their homes are shuttered, or occupied by someone else entirely. A stranger who nods without speaking. Just like you. There are no funerals anymore, just absences. Holidays come and go without feast or song. The church bells toll too rarely. The market square reopens, but only a handful of stalls stand. The tavern's fire burns, but the benches echo. You find yourself speaking more quietly, as if the silence might be broken by your voice alone. The animals return first, deer in the roads, birds in the chimneys, foxes by the wells. Nature moves into the spaces left by the dead. Trees crack stones. Vines climb walls. The earth, indifferent, begins to reclaim what was borrowed. And yet, even in the quiet, people endure. A child's laughter echoes through a courtyard. A pot clinks on a stove. A dog barks at the setting sun. It's not joy, it's not noise, but it's something. The world is not dead, just empty. And emptiness, unlike death, has room to grow. You breathe in the silence. You walk into it. You plant something. You wait. And somewhere, deep beneath the stillness, life shifts. The world holds its breath. The plague ends, but the grieving doesn't. It lingers like fog, heavy and constant, long after the fires go out and the bells fall silent. A century passes, and still it haunts the soil, the songs, the stories. You may live without the plague, but you don't live without its shadow. Whole generations are born from the ruins, raised by survivors who never truly stopped weeping, just got better at hiding it. You see it in how people build. Houses smaller, tighter, villages ringed with crosses and walls, doors marked with charms, even when the danger is long gone. You hear it in lullabies, soft, sad, and sung as if every child is temporary. The old songs are rewritten. New ones are born, but they're quiet, mournful. No one dances the same way again. Fathers tell sons how the fields once had names, how each grave in the churchyard holds not one body, but a family. Mothers teach daughters how to boil cloth, how to spot a fever before the eyes turn glassy. People avoid crowds, even when it's safe. They keep water barrels clean. They carry fear the way others carry prayer. The grief becomes ritual. Weddings take place by candlelight. Funerals multiply in significance. The dead are remembered not just on holy days, but every day. Plates are left on empty tables. Names are whispered at sunrise. And though the cause is gone, the symptoms remain. Nightmares. Caution. The weight behind every smile that says, I remember who's missing. And then there are the ghost names, the ones etched into walls, scribbled into prayer books, carved into trees. You don't know who they were, but they were someone worth remembering, someone whose grief was so strong it needed to be left behind like a seed, planted in wood, in stone, in memory. And over time, grief becomes something else, tradition, identity, a kind of loyalty to the past. People no longer ask if you lost someone. They ask how many. Because in a world that survived the plague, mourning becomes a language everyone speaks. And though the tears may dry, the grief remains, a century later, and still just under the surface. Time smooths the sharp edges of memory. Pain becomes story. Story becomes legend. And before long, you are no longer a person, you're a myth. They don't remember your name. They remember the shape of it. They remember someone who lit candles while the sky fell, who fed neighbors when the bread ran out, who buried the dead when no one else dared to. You become the one who survived, the girl with the red shawl, the man who never spoke after the fever. Your details blur, your humanity melts, and in its place something larger, almost holy. Children are told your story to remind them what strength looks like. Elders speak of you as if they knew you, though they never did. Artists paint you with solemn eyes and robes that you never owned. Songs are written in your honor. Not accurate ones, better ones. Versions where you were braver, quieter, more saintly than you ever felt. Versions where your fear is painted as wisdom, your grief as grace. You become the cautionary tale and the comfort, the ghost in the mirror and the guardian at the gate. And though your bones lie deep beneath an unmarked field, people still say your name during storms, still pray to you during sickness, still swear they saw you walking in the mist. But myths are lonely. No one remembers how much you cried, how close you came to breaking. No one recalls the small, ugly moments, the hoarding, the screaming, the doubt. No one knows how much it hurt to keep going. They only know you did, and maybe that's enough. Maybe becoming a myth is the final mercy. Because when your real story is too full of suffering, maybe it's better to be remembered as something softer, something stronger, something impossible. So you fade, but in your fading, you glow. When the last pit is filled, when the final bell tolls, the world opens its eyes, and nothing looks the same. The plague didn't just take lives. It took the scaffolding of society. It shattered systems, rewrote rules, burned traditions down to their bones. What comes after is not a return. It is a transformation. Feudalism cracks. With so few workers left, the peasants realize they are no longer powerless. They demand better wages, refuse old orders. They walk off the land and into cities, or form new villages where the nobility cannot find them. Lords try to hold on. They pass laws, issue threats. But the labor force is gone, and with it, the illusion of control. Religious authority breaks too. People saw the priests fall. They prayed as their children died. They watched holy places become tombs. The church remains, but its grip loosens. New sects rise. Mystics, heretics, questioners. A crack forms in the wall of obedience, and through it seeps doubt and then change. Medicine begins to shift, slowly. The old ways, bloodletting, divine astrology, don't feel strong enough anymore. Survivors begin asking questions. Why did some live? What spread the sickness? The idea of cause, of science, crawls out of the ashes. Cities grow, trade shifts, land is redistributed. In some places, entire cultures reconfigure. Art turns darker, richer, more human. Literature changes tone. In a strange way, the devastation clears the ground for rebirth. The Black Death, for all its cruelty, breaks the spell of stasis. It cracks the world wide open. But the cost? Unthinkable. Tens of millions dead, families erased, cultures hollowed out, entire generations grown up in the shadow of death. No invention, no policy, no social evolution can erase the smell of that many lost dreams. And no change comes clean. For every freedom born, a fear remains. For every idea sparked, a wound continues to fester. The world moves forward, but it does so limping. Here's the truth you won't like. For all the blood, for all the bodies, For all the sermons, processions, fires, and silence, most people still didn't wash their hands. Not really, not often, not with soap, not the way we would think of it now, because no one knew, not then. Germs didn't have names. Bacteria was centuries away from being discovered. The invisible remained invisible, and because of that, even the survivors didn't understand why they survived or how close they came to dying again. It's easy to look back with arrogance, to mock the garlic necklaces, the bundles of herbs, the bloodletting, the prayers shouted into empty rooms. But remember, they did what they could with what they had. They reached for meaning, for structure, for anything. They didn't have microscopes, they had incense. But still, imagine a bar of soap, a basin of clean water, a habit of washing hands before breaking bread. How many might have lived? You think about that as you walk home. You pass sinks, dispensers, taps that give clean water in an instant. You wash your hands without thinking. It's routine, easy, almost forgettable. But it wasn't always like this, and the cost to get here was enormous. So tonight, when you turn the tap, remember the ones who couldn't. The ones who prayed while touching the infected. Who kissed their loved ones goodbye without knowing they were carrying death in their palms. Who lit candles beside the dying, not realizing the fire wasn't enough to cleanse what clung to their hands. You survived this story, but not everyone did. All because the world hadn't yet learned the simplest act of all. Washington your hands.